Bonjour à tous, bonjour, merci pour
Good
vous.
morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. I think that we're going to start very soon. We're going to wait about 1 minute more to give others time to join us. While we are waiting, we're going to talk about some housekeeping before we start. I will introduce myself first. My name is Aissa Tu, and I work for FHI 360, and I'm working on a project to encourage access and good management of family planning methods in West Africa. Welcome to our webinar. So a few housekeeping details before we get started. In this webinar, there will be a simultaneous interpretation in English. If you would like to listen in English, you just need to click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then on English. And if you want to listen in French, you can also click on French. You can also mute the original audio in French so that you won't hear it in the background. Next slide. Welcome once again. So without further ado, I am going to hand the floor over to Dr. Mokhtar Diallo. He is Director of CS4FP+, and he is going to present opening remarks. Thank you very much, Dr. Mokhtar. You have the floor. Thank you, Aissatou. Thank you, participants. It is a pleasure for me to be here speaking with you in order to talk about knowledge management. As you know, CS4FP+ works to strengthen the capacity of civil society organizations in the 9 countries of the Ouagadougou Partnership. We have launched a dynamic partnership with Knowledge Success in order to work alongside them and to work with more civil society organizations in order to build more knowledge management techniques. So I hope that you have a very interesting session on this subject. Thank you very much, Aissatou. Thank you, Dr. Mokhtar. And now we will be handing the floor to Tara Sullivan, who is Director of Knowledge Success. Tara, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. It is a great pleasure for me to speak with you this morning. I'll share just a little bit about the Knowledge Success Project, which is led by the Johns Hopkins Center for Communication Programs in collaboration and in partnership with AMREF, Busara, and FHI 360. Next slide, please. So just to say a little bit about what Knowledge Success is, it is a global project that is funded by the USAID Office of Population and Reproductive Health, and our objective is to support learning, collaboration, and knowledge exchange within family planning and reproductive health community. Next slide. And with that, our objective is really to ensure that people who are working in voluntary family planning programs can find, share, and use the knowledge they need to transform the lives of women and men, couples and families everywhere. And while I have the floor, I just wanted to share a few resources that I thought you might find useful in your work. First, I'd like to invite you to check out our website if you have a chance. It's designed in such a way that you can easily find what is relevant for you and in a timely way, and formatted in a way that makes it easy for you to get to what you need quickly. Everything on the website is available in French. And then next slide, please. I did want to also just alert you to an opportunity that will be coming your way soon, I believe in mid-July of this year. It's an opportunity called Learning Circles, and this is an interactive series that's going to be online. It's designed for mid-career family planning and reproductive health professionals to really explore what is working and what's not working within family planning. So we'll be organizing them in regional cohorts. We already have one that has signups ongoing for Anglophone Africa, and we will soon be opening up registration for Asia and Francophone Africa. So we hope that you'll join us with that. With that, I know you have a lot to go through today, so I will hand the floor back to Aissatou. Thank you so much for letting me join you today.
Thank you very much, Tara. Thank you so much for welcoming all of us. So now we are going to hand the floor to Dr. Mamadou Diabate, who is trying to join us. He leads the Coalition of Civil Society Organizations for West Africa. It seems that he might not be here. Is Mamadou here? He is not connected yet, but we hope that we will have some time to speak with him later during our roundtable discussion. So now I'm going to give you a presentation about some basic concepts about knowledge management. Next slide, please. As I was saying, we're going to share some concepts about knowledge management and some tools that we use for this. We're going to talk about the importance of knowledge management, the obstacles, and the opportunities involved in knowledge management. Next slide. So to get started, I wanted to do a little survey. So Natalie is going to put the poll up in Zoom, and we all have different ideas about what knowledge management is. So that's why I wanted to ask how you define knowledge management. I'm going to read all of the answers, and then I'm going to ask you to write the letter that corresponds to the best response in the chat window. So for this question, the first question is, what is knowledge management? A vague intellectual exercise that does not apply to everyone. The second, B, the art of building websites and databases. The third, C, a technology solution to an organizational problem. D, something that some folks in my organization do, mainly those in IT or librarians, that is not applicable to my work. Or E, the last response, none of the above. So you just need to respond, and by putting in one of these letters. Thank you very much. You can put your answer in the chat box, and then we will see that. I see that we're already getting responses in the chat. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of these responses. So we see several different responses. We have some who have put C, some who have put D, others who have put E. So that is the right response, E. Knowledge management is not any of the above, A, B, C, or D. It is not any of these definitions that we have listed above. So all of this is involved in knowledge management, but knowledge management is much larger than these other solutions. Next slide. So what is knowledge management? The term today is used for many different healthcare workers and professionals, but many of us do practice knowledge management every day without realizing it. So I'm going to give you a few examples. When a healthcare provider refers to the latest guidelines on how to treat a disease, he or she is using KM. In another way, when a program manager uses a new telephone app to facilitate communications between community health workers and their supervisors, once again, they are using knowledge management. Also, when a policymaker is looking at a study in order to guide a future policy about transfer of tasks to provide contraceptive implants by nurses, once again, this person is using knowledge management. So what is the commonality between all of these activities? All of these global health professionals are using products and approaches of knowledge management to find, share, and use knowledge in their work in order to improve the lives of individuals and entire communities. Next slide. So our definition of knowledge management. At Knowledge Success, we define knowledge management as a systematic process to collect information and to connect it to people. Our ultimate goal is that people will be able to use this knowledge to work effectively and efficiently. So what exactly is it? So we talked about the examples earlier, but to take a healthcare provider who is looking at the latest guidelines about a service provision to deliver a contraceptive method, that is knowledge management in practice. Or a group of people who have produced necessary information in order to document guidelines about providing services, researchers, program managers, editors, etc. So that is also knowledge management. So all of this knowledge has been collected and then synthesized in order to develop guidelines. In this case, WHO and its expert working groups at the international level, health ministries at the national level, and so on. These guidelines have been communicated to people who can implement them. In this case, providers who serve clients of family planning services. The commonality between all of these activities is that these health professionals use knowledge management tools and techniques in order to find this knowledge, to share it, and to use it in their work with the goal of improving the lives of people and entire communities. So you can see that once again, access as well as sharing and use.
A few tools and techniques for knowledge management that I'd like to share with you. This picture is a very illustrative and useful presentation of what knowledge management is in practice. This matrix shows what modalities use tools and techniques of knowledge management within the continuum of from data collection to people's connection to this information, while ensuring that information are pushed towards the users to provide them with the tools so that they can extract the data themselves. So if you look at the top of the portion of the matrix, it shows the tools that require more human interactions to connect these people. The examples that are talking most to us today are meetings and conferences where we usually participate by talking between each other. Other techniques that you may not be as aware of are what we call the knowledge cafes, café de connaissance in French, or peer assist or assistance par les pairs, for instance. Let me describe to you a little bit better what peer assist is. It is an activity that allows a group that needs assistance to solve a problem to get structured orientation and guidance from a group that has met a similar problem and has solved it. According to our experience, these interactive techniques for knowledge management are particularly useful to find tacit knowledge, that is the know-how that people already have, and the lower portion of the matrix, you will see tools and techniques for knowledge management that are used to share explicit knowledge between important groups of people. So it could be publication, memorandum, summary records, websites, databases, and so forth. And finally, I like this image because it recalls in a most relevant manner the fact that knowledge management is not always automatically a technological solution, such as a database or an internet site. It goes back to our original survey. Indeed, knowledge management covers a broad range of activities that connects people amongst themselves, because people are at the heart of knowledge management. Knowledge is generated, captured, and shared thanks to a human interaction, which is absolutely essential. Beyond the lack of understanding of knowledge management and its tools, there are other obstacles to KM or an efficient KM. Some of the main obstacles that we have identified during co-creation workshops organized by Knowledge Success with the family planning and reproductive health professionals, particularly in French-speaking Africa in June last year. What we have seen are what we call the overload of choices and the cognitive overload. During these workshops, a good knowledge management revealed itself to be blocked by an overload of choices and cognitive overload. The excess of choice or choice overload is what happens when we have too many options, which can give rise to undesirable results such as frustrations and lack of action. Family planning and reproductive health professionals who attended indicated that if there was a better access to internet and technology, which gave a better access to information, the mere number of different sources of information that exist may give a sense of being overwhelmed, because it is not very easy to screen through all the results to find the specific information that we're looking for. Of course, this situation is exacerbated by the fact that most of the health professionals are very busy and they have very little time to dedicate to seek a robust information process. Corollary obstacle is that of a cognitive overload, which is what happens when we have too many information presented in a manner that is difficult to understand, which makes their processing and implementation hard. Professionals from family planning and reproductive health have indicated that they need exploitable, utilizable, usable information that they can implement directly in their programs, but information are often without a context or not sufficiently specific for their work. More specifically, they indicated that there is a lack of information on what works in family planning and what doesn't, with details on the how of the implementation and the information on what doesn't operate and what were the lessons drawn from the failures. Knowledge management presents a number of opportunities in the context of what we are doing, and there are a number of positive points that need to be stressed. One has to do with organizational or social standards related to information sharing. In particular, we have observed that there is a strong information sharing culture among organizations, and that many organizations are aware of the importance of knowledge management. So this is a wonderful opportunity offered by knowledge management. The other one is that these organizations have stressed the importance of collaborations and partnerships that facilitate a transparent and timely dialogue. For instance, people from various organizations meet frequently within technical working group, and they use that space to share more openly what functions and what doesn't function always within their programs. The type of space also offers the possibility to share important information in a timely fashion, since they do not need to go through the process of official publication, for instance. Other opportunity is the stress recently placed on the democratization of information, which has been mentioned time and again during our co-creation workshop, and which allow to include new voices and add them to the discussion. One more category of opportunities in knowledge management has to do with incitations, motivations that push people to share and use information. Generally speaking, family planning and reproductive health professionals wish to share their knowledge with their peers and their colleagues in order to improve efficiency in their field. So this is also a reciprocal action because it encourages collaboration with other people and learning from them. And the recognition of this sharing also encourages information sharing. Thank you so much for your kind attention. These were the few slides I wanted to share with you. I think that now we're going to be able to give the floor to Dr. Mokhtar Diallo for his presentation on the experiences of obstacles encountered and lessons drawn from exchanges of information and knowledge management in family planning and reproductive health. Thank you. Thank you very much, Aissatou. I'd like to thank you again for this wonderful opportunity that allows us to realize that we all practice knowledge management on a daily basis, but we need to maybe formalize it a little bit so we can organize ourselves better so that the acquired knowledge can be stored somewhere and be available and not just stored in our brains. So it is essential to be able to distinguish between the different types of information, what is truly useful for us, what is not so. So let's move forward, if I may. This is a small reminder of our context of intervention. This is an initiative that aims at strengthening the abilities and capacities of CSOs within the context of the Ouagadougou Partnership with the support of the Hewlett Foundation. And from 2016 to 2020, we also had the support of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. This is a process to support civil society that aimed at establishing coalitions in the various countries and have a better organized, better structured civil society so it can play its role as a watcher and help the implementation of the conditions of the Ouagadougou Partnership for the FP 2030 and become key participants in the implementation with the support of health ministries. From a structural viewpoint, the coalition has been put in place in the 9 countries of the partnership. Then we had the regional coalition, which has 2 main entities, the regional the leaders, the coalition of the religious leaders, young leaders, and the coalition of the religious leaders. Chad has joined one of them. So this is really a very important element with interventions at the level of family plannings that were included, also education, sexual education, promotion of services meeting the needs of the young and adolescents, prevention of HIV/AIDS, reaction to COVID-19 in all the countries of the group. We talk about opportunity to share experiences and transfer capacities through the interventions that we have put in place. These interventions fall within the strategies that we have put in place. Each one of these strategies follows a need to strengthen capabilities, strengthen capacities within the coalitions of members, as well as with the targets. So the lobbying and defense train civil society agents to transmit, pass on knowledge management information acquired so they can be transmitted to their peers and the members. As far as sex education, there's different types of training to update all the decision makers that are involved. We had organized a multi-sectorial approach involving Mauritania and Niger, among others. And this has allowed us to provide the decision makers with the same level of information as the agents in the field, which gave a joint vision for the intervention framework through a technical working group, which creates roadmaps for the entire country and is used as a framework to share information and knowledge. The same for adolescent and youth services. We have accompanied the implementation of a tool to follow up what is happening in the region, the motion tracker. The implementation of this motion tracker tool involves a forum of exchange and sharing of information amongst the different countries, how the data is collected, shared with the different actors. Motion tracker allowed to identify better who does what in each country and to better specify, refine the intervention. This was very important. We also had we also developed a young youth ambassador strategies, also with a support by peers, which was very useful because peer educators are the ones at the beginning that can play a part at the national and regional level, and then they come back to their original organizations to transfer the new competences, the new skills they've acquired. And this way we have developed this strategy, the strategy known YAF, where 45 youth ambassadors benefited. So this important group of young people that have been trained in the same activity sectors are now the main actors who can work on this. And religious and traditional leaders were also an important target for us, because then they can transfer all the skills, all the knowledge acquired to the peers, the communities, and so forth. So these activities of social mobilization, promotion of the use of the tools through awareness campaigns, such of various type, awareness against transmission of HIV/AIDS, etc. All this allows a transmission of the information, not only to the populations, but also all the preparation that is needed, the immersion in the information allows a better establishment of fundamental knowledge.
So we also have platforms to share experience and knowledge. We have a website that has had almost 1.2 million visits and interactions. We also operate on Twitter and Facebook to promote the links between religion and health. We have religious leaders who are sharing information on their blogs, on their Twitter. We also have inter-country workshops. These are really important forums for sharing between countries in order to talk about solving similar problems, and they can share their own experiences and their own initiatives that worked in their country. We also have a General Assembly for the FPCROSC to talk about their practice. We also have learning, innovation, and skills building spaces. So we call this LEAS. This is a way to group together information and experiences to share it with the participants. We also have steering committees, or a steering committee of CS4FP. And this is part of the framework of experience sharing. It provides a network to discuss experiences and innovations that will allow us to make more rapid progress towards our goals. We also have exchanges among technical and working groups of teachers and health workers. So CS4FP is a platform in order to support capacity building for PFSR. We have developed this initiative in a dynamic partnership that has allowed us to work with each initiative at a regional level. And we have been able to reap the benefits of other people's initiatives in order to learn from one another. We use this platform to learn more about initiatives, and we work very closely with the coordination unit of the Ouagadougou Partnership, and we share best practices with them. We have a role of an accelerator. We can be an accelerator in our region. For example, we have been able to bring gynecological and obstetric organizations together to allow them to speak more in order to further their goals with the Ouagadougou Partnership. We are also working with regional organizations to support comprehensive sex education initiatives. And we are also using this initiative to make sure that we have a more important place in government priorities in West Africa. So here are several other means of experience sharing. They are here and they allow us to best benefit and best define this knowledge and to share it with different stakeholders at the country level, at the regional level. There are websites like mafamilleplanifiée.org, as well as all of the media supports that have been created. We have studies, activity reports, newsletters, training modules that are available on the website, abstracts that have been presented at regional and international conferences. There are also publications, webinars, and there are many, many webinars that have been organized and put together because of the pandemic and because of COVID-19. There are also communications between civil society and other stakeholders. And we also have created a map of countries and the actors in FPRH. We have, this map defines which countries are involved, who's working in which countries, who's working in which regions, what regions are defined as. So this gives us a good idea of the national, regional, and international work that is being done. We also have panels that we participated in to encourage better experience sharing. Next slide. As for significant challenges, there is always the capacity to document interventions. This is very, very important. And this is where we got the idea to collaborate with Knowledge Success in order to better support civil societies in civil society organizations in West Africa to document their information. This was a way to provide them with better tools for this process. We wanted to look at how to document these best practices and then how to share them and distribute them. When we're looking at overall results, it is very important to be able to document their experiences and distribute this information. Of course, there is also a significant challenge with funding for studies and the documentation. we need to be sure that for every bit of funding that we receive, there is a line in the documentation about the budget so that we can be very transparent. We're also looking at another challenge is the constant and active management of the platforms for coalitions. So I knew that I only had 5 minutes. I know I probably took 3 or 4 minutes more, but thank you so much for your attention. Thank you, Dr. Mokhtar, for this presentation. It was very interesting, and it is very important to know what activities are already being implemented and what is already being carried out as part of knowledge management. So thank you very much. We are now going to move to our roundtable discussion, which will be moderated by Aisha. So Aisha Hante is the president of the Young FPRH ambassadors in Senegal. She has a degree in public law from the University of Cheikh Anta Diop. She is also program coordinator for reproductive health at Réseau PAPTEV and an alumni of the Frederick Ebert Foundation for political leadership. So Aisha, I will give you the floor to moderate our roundtable. Thank you so much. Thank you, Aisha, too, and thank you to Dr. Mokhtar Diallo for his presentation. Welcome, everyone, to our roundtable discussion to share experiences, to share best experiences and best practices, but also what didn't work. Now I would like to introduce our panelists. First, we have Mamoudou Diabaté, who is president of the Regional Coalition of OSC of Civil Societies and Family Planning of the Ouagadougou Partnership. He is president of the Coalition for Civil Society Organizations and for the repositioning of family planning in Mali. He has a master's in psychopedagogy from the ENSUP. He was also named a commissioner of the Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission in 2015. Our next panelist is Sheikh Elhaj Umaru Mahaman Bashir. He is president of the Alliance of Religious Leaders of West Africa for Health and Development. He is a theologian and an Islamologist, and he is a defender of women's rights and education for young girls. He is president of the Regional Office of Religious Leaders of the Coalition of CS4FP of Niamey, and he has a diploma from the University of Al-Azhar in Cairo and the Islamic University of Sai in Niger. And our last panelist is Uri Kamisoko. She is vice president of the Young Ambassadors Network for Reproductive Health and Family Planning in Mali. She is 21, and soon she will have a master in monitoring, evaluation, and management of projects. She is passionate about sexual and reproductive health rights of adolescents and young people, and she is a strong activist for women and girls' rights. Her commitment and determination has allowed her to occupy several leadership positions, such as social intervention manager for the Malian League of Women's Rights and a regional technical consultant for the Thank You Heroes campaign. So now let's move on to our roundtable discussion. We would like to do a bit of experience sharing of best practices. So let's turn to our panelists. Mamoudou. Hello. Hello, Mamoudou. Can you hear me? Yes, I'm very sorry because there was a bit of a mix-up with the date of the meeting. So I was not here earlier and I'm very sorry about that. No, that's okay, Mr. Diabate. Omaru Mahaman Bashir. Uri. Yes, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, we hear you. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. So, Mr. Omaru Mahaman Bashir. Aisha, I think Cher is connected, but he might have some technical difficulties that we are still working out. So if you'd like to go ahead and start the roundtable, we'll work on figuring out these technical issues. So now let's get started with our roundtable. So I'm going to ask this first question that is going to allow you to open up and start talking about your experiences. As leaders of your organizations, can you talk about the best practices that you have carried out in order to share experiences in your organizations? Yes, of course. Once again, I'd like to say hello to everyone. So now I'd like to speak for the Alliance of the Network of Young Ambassadors. These are young ambassadors who are located in the 9 countries of the Ouagadougou Partnership, and they work on family planning initiatives and everything within the context of sexual and reproductive health. As for best practices for experience sharing and communication, the activities of young ambassadors fall into 5 categories. So we have mass communication, social mobilization, advocacy, communication support, and partnership activities. So these activities are often funded by CS4FP+, and to further the goals of this project. We also have partnership with ONGs that can help us to attain our goals. So to speak to you a little bit about the activities that we are carrying out in terms of experience sharing and communication, as well as training and raising awareness. There are so many activities around sexual and reproductive health initiatives, and these activities are led by young people and young ambassadors. Thank you very much, Ori. So now, moving on, as president of the regional coalition, you can talk about lessons learned and best practices in experience sharing in your organization.
Thank you. Indeed, I am the president of the regional coalition of the CSO and FP of the Ouagadougou Partnership. So our structure does not carry out just activities of awareness like the young ambassadors. We work at the level of country coalitions. We organize a number of activities for promotion and advocacy. As far as best practices, there is the fact that we are able to gather in the context of an exchange of experiences and knowledge and capacity building. This is very important. And within the coalition, there is experience sharing, exchanges that are done online, but also in person. Each NGO, each country coalition has its own experience. So a country can communicate its experience and share it with the others, just like a coalition can share what it's done with the others. So when we meet, we're able to see who is doing what is successful, etc. So we can have these exchanges that allow us to go further even in terms of monitoring and evaluation. As my colleague said during the presentation, CSOs and coalition do act a lot on the ground in the field for family planning services, but a lot of things cannot be shown because they are hidden by the activities of the public services, such as the Health General Directorate or the various reproductive health divisions. So it is difficult to list all the activities done in the field. We have the effort that was done at the level of the civil society organizations. There was a new initiative that was launched, and we were able to benefit from it. It involved a number of sectors. We were able to get the information, check the information, and there was a pilot experiment that was done in another country, and we got results that were there scaled up to the other countries as another best practice. There is the youth ambassador strategy, because these youth ambassadors are the ones truly who are the first beneficiaries of family planning services. Indeed, they are at an age where they need to have a lot of information about family planning and reproductive health. So they need to also be actors as well as users. So this experience using the youth ambassadors has allowed to improve contraceptive prevalence and include in the budgets the need of the youth ambassadors and for their activities. This was included in the plans. Another practice that we can mention as an experience to be shared is diversity. We included the religious leaders, traditional leaders, youth ambassadors. So in an action on family planning, if the religious leaders are not involved, nothing is going to happen, because they are the ones who speak with authority on these matters of family planning and reproductive health. So we take into account, of course, Muslim religion and other religions, and we make sure that the religious leaders carry out a number of activities and are involved so that family planning is accepted. And it is beneficial in all countries to have a policy that is better programmed in this field. This is not limited to religious or traditional leaders or youth ambassadors, but there is a confirmed experience that comes from the strengthening of skills. And these are the best practices that I wanted to mention and that I want to encourage so that we can improve even further on our way in West Africa. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Diabate. Mr. Mohammed Bachir is now with us. Greetings, greetings, Imam. Welcome. Welcome to our roundtable. We were on the first question, asking you to present your best practices and the lessons drawn from the sharing of experience and communication in your organizations. Well, first, Good afternoon, good evening to all. As far as our activities are concerned, I would like to talk about the importance of training, capacitation, capacity building, and information. These are activities that we carried out with success and that allowed us to have something extra compared to our fathers, because there were many people who didn't accept family planning or other issues of development. So this was very important. It allowed us to train our peers on these activities. We also have the various communication channels that we can use, the new communication and information technologies that allowed us to carry out some training and allowed many to participate because of the platforms that could be used for these activities. And it provided us with the possibility to exchange with youth and establish a channel to carry out activities in cooperation with them. So I would say that this was very important for us, training and capacity building, as well as information. The second point is the importance of activities with our peers in the context of coalition. The coalition, what I would call the synergic activities, not only involving the coalition, but the various organizations and associations. All this allowed us to defend our scope of intervention and get visions, access to financing that allow us to carry out training facilities and improve the issue of family planning and sexual education. Thank you, Mr. Bashir. Let me come back to Mr. Diabate. Amongst your experience, could you tell us how you manage this experience sharing with others? Now, at your level, with the youth ambassadors, with the strategy there, the strategy with the religious and community leaders, how can you share those global experiences? Mamoutou. Le micro de Mamoutou n'est pas allumé. Mamoutou, there you go. Now we can hear you. Are you asking me how we share these experiences inside the coalition? Yes. Well, as I said, we have a framework within the regional coalition, and each month we had set up Skype phone calls. So we would meet and give the floor to each and every person attending the meeting, be they the religious leader, community leaders, youth ambassador, etc. So we are trying to see who has been doing what and where things were successful, where things didn't quite work as well. And we are trying also to identify difficulties to see if they were how they were dealt with at the level of the coalition and if they were solved. And each year we would meet. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, we have not been able to hold Ouagadougou partnerships meeting in person, but with the support that we received, we were able 2 or 3 days before the meeting of the ICPO to gather and look at the action plans we had drafted a year before and see how far we had gone, what had been accomplished, what were the experiences of the ones and the others. We also want to mobilize youth ambassadors and have them speak of their experience. Religious leaders, whichever their religion may be, would speak, as well as traditional leaders. So everybody is given the floor to talk about those action plans. We talk about experiences in terms of resource mobilization and the difficulties potentially encountered in the field. And then we create a full report that is distributed, circulated among the sectors. This is how the work is done beyond these institutionalized meetings. I can pick up the phone and call anybody to discuss any issue on a project, for instance, financed by the EAS at the level of the Mali coalition. We knew that there was an experience happening there. So we have a number of communication channels, and we can call and see how the activity was carried out. What were the successes? What are the lessons to be drawn? We can also contact other countries. It's not limited to French-speaking Francophone Africa. So this is how we organize these experience sharing. The regional coalition is not a rigid structure, but it helps mostly with capacity building. This is what I wanted to say about how things operate within the regional coalition. Thank you very much, Mr. Diabotou. Could you talk to us about the activity of the Youth Ambassador for Communication and Sharing of Knowledge, URI? Thank you for your question, Aisha. All these activities have had some success. So we can mention, for instance, the use of social platforms, social networks. We have awareness campaigns and experience sharing activities. As far as the use of social networks, we can say that one of the strength and the strategies that has really been successful was the use of social network with youth ambassadors, going through Twitter in particular, which is very powerful, and it reaches the donors, the technical and financial partners, and we need to transmit the messages. We organize tweets and tutorship meetings to discuss advocacy. Then we launch a call upon the targets we want to reach. We have a number of publications on WhatsApp, Facebook, and youth ambassadors have blogs where we exchange experiences on family planning and reproductive health. Beyond activities on social networks, we also have awareness activities, educational campaign with the peers. We inform them, make them aware of what's going on. We share information as much as possible. And this is a strategy that is very efficient in such countries as Mali, where young people meet around a cup of tea. It's really as if we were exchanging. So we also carry out conferences in schools, whether public or universities or so forth, participation to the festivals, maybe they're national or international. The youth ambassadors are part of all these festivals. There are national and international events where we have traveling shows, and this is an activity that is no longer to be represented. So it's something that truly has its full sense every year when the Alliance of Youth Ambassadors meets in order to create a tweet. And in each country, we try to organize activities. And so I wanted to say that we have a lot of activities, and we also have the intergenerational dialogue with religious community leaders, parents, to see how we can break the taboos around reproductive health and family planning, bring the leaders, religious community, and to communicate with us so we can really feel comfortable in our communication with them, to talk to them about the challenges we encounter and our daily needs in terms of health and reproductive health. These are not issues you can freely discuss at home.
So as for sharing this intergenerational dialogue, this is a place to talk about many different subjects and tools. This is a dialogue that is very open. So we also have activities for experience sharing as well as advocacy, which benefits from the commitment of our youth ambassadors. We also are looking at the placement of healthcare professionals. Today, we have a bit of information, and even with this information, they want to go to these health centers to get more information and to use contraception services. So sometimes these young people are not welcomed very warmly, or they may feel judged. And so we want to work with healthcare professionals to raise awareness among them about these issues. So this is a very important activity. This is an initiative that we are carrying out at a national level, a regional level, and that we are working with our youth ambassadors to support. We also have some Facebook Lives that allow our youth ambassadors to talk about these subjects. And in this way, we can maybe reach out to 50 or 100 people if we are not using social networks. But with social media, we can reach a much larger audience. So we also sometimes do flash mobs where policymakers and decision makers are meeting, and we will carry out advocacy work in these places. We can sometimes have very emotional moments where advocates are sharing their own experiences. So these are some initiatives that have been very successful for us. We try very much to really leverage social media to achieve our goals. Thank you very much, Uri. So now, Mr. Omaru Mahaman Bashir, what are some of the activities that have been very successful for you in terms of experience sharing? So before talking about our experiences, I would like to talk about my peers. We have many religious leaders of different belief systems. And in different meetings, different people are talking, different representatives are able to speak. And they're able to talk about issues and taboos regarding family planning. We also carry out activities that have been organized by partners and international NGOs that allow us to better develop a strategy. And this also allows us to work out the details of different training formats. There have been studies that our organization has access to. We have been able to carry out different studies in Niger and in Mali, for example. We were able to put religious leaders into contact with different initiatives. So that said, the experiences that are most important are awareness raising initiatives. These have been quite significant. We look at social communication to change social norms. We are working with healthcare personnel, but also with the general public. We have many activities that we have carried out, not only at the country level, but also at the regional level. And this has given us an opportunity to be very successful, to talk about the coalition and to support other family planning initiatives, because we've been working at behavioral change in order to support our goals. So all of that said, for these exchanges and this awareness raising, we have tried to encourage discussions on social networks, and these discussions have allowed us to reach the success and the level of activity that we have been seeking. So this is important to give people the opportunity to speak and to encourage this inter-country discussion in order to look at and discuss different service delivery methods. This has allowed us, in the end, to develop a sort of autonomy in the discussions. Thank you very much. Mamoudou Diabaté, what activities have been most successful in experience sharing for your organization? So the activities that have been most successful in terms of experience sharing are activities, support activities in different countries. So we have organized monitoring missions and follow-up missions in different countries. For missions in Mauritania, in Senegal, in Guinea, and in other countries in Francophone West Africa. We have moved into this level, and then we were able to look at our relationships with certain partners and with different structures. So with different partners, it was important to look at different techniques. For example, working with international institutions was different from working with country level institutions. For implementation of activities, it was good to have support from both. So we were able to develop these initiatives and programs together. This was important in Mali, in Niger, Burkina Faso, and in Guinea. We had a project, a capacity building project for the FPRH field. And this allowed us to work with different leaders to be able to further our programs. This collaboration was very important, and it was important to have this work in the region that would promote cooperation between countries. We visited different coalitions and different groups, and this allowed us to further the collaboration between different countries and the coalitions within these countries. This experience brought us today to looking at funding in all 9 of the countries and to look at the Ouagadougou Partnership coalitions. We have 5 countries that we still want to get involved in this coalition, and it has allowed us to encourage capacity building efforts in the different coalitions, as well as to support collaboration between countries to promote reproductive and sexual health. So thank you very much. And those are the experiences I wanted to share. Thank you. I'm going to stay with you for a little bit. I wanted to know, what challenges do you face in experience sharing, and how do you plan to improve the situation? So an important challenge for me is when we look at the initiatives and what we want to do, it's not quite being met by the level of funding that we have. So when we look at the ICPO, we have the coalition that has action plans, and we look at this each year. We do have funding issues and not enough funding to carry out all of these action plans. So this is a very significant challenge for us. It's a challenge of resources and limited resources. So each issue can come back to this issue of capitalization, of resource capitalization. Another challenge is the challenge of communication. We have communication plans that have been developed. And we can also, even when looking at the implementation of a strategic plan, we have worked with different programs to support us in these communication strategies. But yes, we want to move forward and continue to develop our communication strategies, but it has been difficult. So what are some of the solutions that we are looking into? The connecting different partners is one solution that we are looking at, in including developing stronger partnerships within the coalition. The regional director in Dakar is an important asset, but we also need to think about the different offices of the Ouagadougou partnership and to look at how to build this coalition among countries as well as the partnerships with other groups, as well as looking at these action plans and how we can best leverage them. As for resource mobilization, we have a coalition that is based in Burkina, and we need to make sure that these offices have the minimum necessary in order to operate. And we need to make sure that we can support them and work alongside them to develop their collaboration with other partners. We are also sending information. We need to ensure that there is correspondence and communication between the different partners. And this is a very positive initiative with regards to supporting, and not just an individual support, but to continue to develop this support and this collaboration to support not only the Malian Foundation, but also other partners. So those are some of the solutions that we have in mind to deal with these challenges.
Thank you. Uri, could you tell us what difficulties and challenges do youth ambassadors into which youth ambassadors run to, and how you think they can be solved? I would like to say that in most of the 9 countries of the Ouagadougou partnership, these are countries that are very closely tied to the religion and customs and tradition. So in terms of sharing of experience and communication, the very first challenges to which youth ambassadors are confronted is the weight of tradition, which impact the issues of reproductive and sexual health. In some regions of our countries, it is extremely difficult to discuss reproductive health. It is difficult to talk about family planning in particular, because people have a number of bias vis-a-vis reproductive health. negative bias. They feel that family planning is something that came to constrict African growth. So there's a lot of reluctance around the concept of family planning as a whole. Then there is the weight of a number of religious leaders who remain today very reluctant vis-a-vis the issue of family planning. So all these are the challenges with which we're dealing, because passing on the information, it's already difficult when people have bias, but also when they pass on bad information in terms of family planning methods, for instance, and when you try to make them aware, to inform them, people seem to think that we're coming because we've been paid by a project, or because we want to reduce Africans, or that family plannings make a woman sterile. So there are a number of bias, of negative bias vis-a-vis family planning that are the main challenges that we have to face. In some regions, with the sensitivities in Mali, for instance, or Burkina or Niger, it is impossible to talk about family planning. And then now we have the COVID-19 pandemic, which is increasing the severity of difficulty of communications. People have to respect barrier measures, protective gestures. So they use mostly social platforms, social media. We have a lot of obstacle to communication and the experience and sharing when it comes to awareness. As I said, we use social networks in order not to remain isolated from all this and to wait until the pandemic is over. So after the challenges, when it comes to talking about solutions, what we use mostly are social networks. Another way to meet the challenge is for us to be strengthened as youth ambassadors. We're young, we're learning, we're sharing our experience with others. We've been privileged to be peer educators and then selected as youth ambassadors, yet we need to be strengthened in terms of communication, advocacy, in order to adapt the information we have, adapt the messages we have to their target, because the messages have to be adapted to their targets. We cannot talk about sexual relationships to a child of 5 years old, who was 5 years old, but we can discuss the very basic of health. So we need to adapt our messages, adapt our advocacy efforts, and see also how to get more financing. We have action plans. We want to reach the most isolated, remote areas. We don't want to limit ourselves to the capital cities. We want to reach the villages where the access to information is so limited that nobody can even talk about family planning. So if youth ambassadors are equipped, trained, and get more financing for their implementation of their action plan, then I believe we'll be able to meet these challenges. Some people are disabled, and we need to be able to provide the information to all those who need it in the way they need it. This is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you. Thank you, Uri. Bashir, could you let us know about your challenges and how you feel that this could be improved? The first challenge was already presented by Mamutu and Uri in terms of mobilization of resources. I think our synergy the action synergy is the second challenge, because we want this synergy to be intergenerational and includes religious leaders, community leaders, and youth ambassadors. We need to make more consistent the information to the different groups. This will allow us to have a clearer version, not only on the social reality of each country, but also of the entire sub-region, which would then allow us to focus more on the problems that we need to meet and solve when it comes to the challenges. I could also talk to you about mobilization of resources. Through resource mobilization, one can finance the activities that could be added. This needs to be discussed. We need to include the Christians, the Muslims, the religious leaders have their own approaches, and the traditional chiefs also need to exchange with us, and we need to exchange with other countries. Under the challenges, we also need to talk about our needs. Just like the regional coalitions, the Arao Barest SD, this coalition needs funding to manage administrative issues as well. We have a secretariat in Ouagadougou. We have an executive secretariat as well, which allows us to try and establish a link, an exchange with the secretariat. And we try to see if they can help support us, in spite of the fact that they're much solicited. But we need the means to be able to implement what we have to do. We also need to talk about the need of budget for action plans. Sometimes the budgets are taken, are included in other groups. So the religious element is not included. We need to have our voice and we need to have our share in each country in the budget so that we can help with these communication. And without this, we won't be able to do much, because our only option, otherwise the only outlet is international NGOs. And we need to talk about behavioral changes. Nobody should forget that there is an issue with religious integrism, and we need to have options to get out of this dead-end situation when it exists. And the health, reproductive health education of youth and so forth. And we need to manage the issue vis-a-vis the religious perspective, vis-a-vis the COVID pandemic. You all know that these challenges have been extremely difficult throughout the world, not just in West Africa. This is a problem, the pandemic is a problem that is confronting the whole world. And we need assets to be able to inform people and make them aware and show them how they can use options to eliminate the obstacles. This is what I wanted to say. Thank you so much, Mr. Bashir, for your answer on the challenges and the improvement of this situation. One final question. A question is asked for Bashir, I believe. How do you manage to combine in Niger, to combine the connection with the Alliance of Religious Leaders for Social and Health Education? At the time, we couldn't talk about family planning. As far as history is concerned, there was an issue with the awareness of family planning. Today, we are at a level of consensus. What has allowed us to do this is to bring the other professions, the other religions, Muslim and Christians, within this alliance. And that has allowed us to move forward, because not only were we doing it by ourselves, but against, often at cross purposes. What you have the example of the ONG Boaba or TCI, who supported us. We are in a pilot project in Niger, in churches and mosques, and there will be an involvement of religious activities for the awareness, thanks to TSI. So all this combined is helping with the awareness, and we've made some improvements, and this is what is giving us more attention globally. A lot of you young people today approve our idea, is support us, and they understand what needs to be done within the region. Thank you so much, Bashir. Our roundtable has reached its end. It is now time to part. I'd like to thank all the participants, all the panelists who spoke to us, all the people who intervened via the chat. And I'm now giving the floor to Mamoudou Diabaté for the final closing words. Thank you. It was a true pleasure for me to be part of this roundtable. I would like to thank those who created this initiative that allows us to exchange on our experiences amongst various entities, with the involvement of the regional leaders, community leaders, religious leaders, youth ambassadors. Each entity has a certain autonomy to produce its own activities and to mobilize its own resources. I'd like to thank you, our facilitator. You set the bar very high with the facilitation of this session, and to share the floor between the various panelists. I know I came in a little late, and again, I apologize. I would like to thank both Aisha and Mukhtar, who allow us to focus yet more strongly on what we have always thought vis-a-vis activities carried out by Ultra Health through the progresses of CS4FP. And thank you to Aisha again for what she said. I hope we will meet often for such presentations and strengthen the participation and the involvement of traditional leaders. When we look at the religious leaders, there are the traditional leaders. We need to give them the floor so we get their input. This allows us to go towards a more complete interregional dialogue, which I feel very important. Uri mentioned it in her presentation again. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to all the religious coalition. Would like to thank all the participants, all the panelists, and I now officially close this meeting. Thank you. Thank you all and farewell.